Hello my friends and welcome, my name is Dennis and this is the latest update from Ukraine. Today I'm gonna speak about Ukrainian front lines and about the very difficult situation, almost disaster situation in Pokrovsk direction. Guys, I have to speak about it because I'm here to tell the truth. In this video, I'm gonna rely to one of the biggest Ukrainian volunteers, Sergei Sternenko, who came out with this recent update about Pokrovsk and the Eastern Front lines, Ukrainian army in general. He described the situation from the point of view of the Ukrainian armed soldiers who obviously in contact with Sternenko. As far as I remember, according to statistics, every fourth drone in Ukrainian army was collected by this volunteer. If we speak about FPV drones especially, so this guy is hard to be accused of working on Russia, right? He has the YouTube channel and yesterday he came out with a video which is called Catastrophic Situation in Pokrovsk, just one step away from the frontline collapse. He said that the Ukrainian soldiers asked him to record this video to raise the awareness of what is really happening. By the way, I'll put his channel and this particular video in the video description just below. It is in Ukrainian, but you may switch on the subtitles in English. Auto translate, and here you select your particular language, for example English. Well, maybe it will not translate correctly, but anyways you'll have at least something. In this video I'll share the same thoughts but in my own way. So let's start about the reviewing picture in general, why Pokrovsk is so important and where Russia attacks. As you see, by the way, judging on the Institute for the Study of War map, Russia moves closer and closer to Pokrovsk. Also they expand sideways daily. Every day they take from 300 meters up to 1 kilometer of the Ukrainian land. I mean, they go forward by that distance. And definitely there is not much distance left towards Pokrovsk and the other settlement, which is also big, Mirnograd. Still, Pokrovsk and Mirnograd are not the cities, those are towns, but it is not that important as the strategic meaning of Pokrovsk. I think for the deep state map it will be easier to show. Pokrovsk used to be one of the main strategic hubs for Ukrainian army. It's the main crossroad for the railroad connection, and also it has the highway which goes all across Donbass. The highway connects the rest of the Ukraine via Pokrovsk with Konstantinovka and Chasiv Yar. Chasiv Yar was partially occupied, by the way, by the Russian armed forces, and Konstantinovka is not that far away, that's the city. And Konstantinovka is the part of this agglomeration of the cities, Slavyansk, Kramatorsk, Drushkivka. Basically one settlement goes to the other with almost no break. And if you check out the highways, there is only one highway left, I mean the big one, just from the northern part towards Slavyansk. So by advancing to Pokrovsk, Russia cuts this large part of the logistics. And for Ukraine it will be really hard to maintain those two areas under control in this case. Logistics is like a blood for the military. Without it, the military will not survive. And you know, guys, judging on the advancement of the Russian army, I almost have no doubts that they will go and take Pokrovsk. From that place, they have two of the variants. Yes, you may say that Pavlograd is really far away, and let me show you it. So here is Pavlograd, and this is Pokrovsk. Really far away, but the problem is that between Pavlograd and Pokrovsk there are just a few of the settlements. Mostly those are just the fields, but mainly there is the free way to go, almost no water obstacles, nothing. It might give the Russian army operational freedom to act in this place. And Pavlograd itself is not far away from the Dnipro city. But my opinion that Russia will concentrate for now in Donetsk Oblast because it's their political goal to take it under control. Even with the Kursk operation, which is quite successful for the Ukrainian armed forces, Russia hesitates to move their forces out from the Pokrovsk direction, from eastern front lines. No, they send more reinforcements. Yeah, because of the Kursk operation I was blinded a little about the situation on the Ukrainian front lines. I thought that Russia definitely might use their forces now in Kursk, but Putin has different goals. He's ready to struggle on the Russian territory for an unknown period of time, but commit his goals in Ukraine. If Ukrainian political and army command thought that Russia would withdraw their forces from the east, and it was the goal of the Kursk operation, well, that goal hasn't been reached so far and probably will never be reached. I think in general the Russian regime doesn't care about their people, and it was shown in the Kursk operation. Then Putin paid $150 for each Russian who was forced to leave his or her home. And the rest of the Russian population, or the rest of the Russia, they simply do not care. So the Ukrainian really effective operation in Kursk hasn't yet influenced the political stability in the Russian Federation. Guys, I record the videos every day just because of your support. I rely now on my Patreon, and by the way, the link for my Patreon page is available in the video description just below. So if you want to support my job, you may join my Patreon. Thank you so much for supporting my motivation. Thanks. Alright, but let's concentrate on our topic. So Russia now advances in three of the main directions, obviously Pokrovsk, then Toretsk, and Vuhledar. They want to take Vuhledar under control because it's the main settlement for Ukrainian defense of this entire area. And Ukraine uses artillery systems placed somewhere near Vuhledar to cut the Russian supplies. I mean, artillery systems are still capable to reach this railroad for the Russian army supplies, which gradually disturbs the Russian logistics. So they want to move the Ukrainian army further away. And it is only possible by taking Vuhledar under control. Russia already wasted thousands of their troops for this operation for 2 of the years, but it seems like now finally they are successful, unfortunately for us and unfortunately for Ukraine. But Pokrovsk is way more important than Vuhledar, and I would say it's the key city for all of the Donetsk Oblast, for Donbass, judging on its strategic and logistics role. And you see, this is the border with Dnipropetrovsk Oblast. It's not really far away from Pokrovsk, so by reaching the city and little further away, Russia will reach the border with Donetsk Oblast. Yeah, this border is not the wall, but basically they will count the Donetsk Oblast in two with this operation. For now, we just witnessed the tactical crisis of the Ukrainian armed forces in Pokrovsk direction, but if Russia takes those settlements together with Pokrovsk, it will lead to the strategic crisis of Ukrainian army on the east. And there is the great chance, as I told you, in this worst case scenario, that the Ukrainian defense will start to collapse in other directions, for example here, because of the poor logistics. All this crisis in Pokrovsk direction started from Avdiivka. So after the fall of Avdiivka, Ukrainian army told, okay, we're gonna withdraw our army to the more prepared positions, and definitely they were prepared in this place. After Russia occupied Avdiivka, they moved forward, and definitely they were stopped here near Berdichi. For a couple of the months, the front lines were boiling here, but after there was the breakthrough of the Russian army towards Ocheretne, they used the rotation of the Ukrainian brigades. The new brigade came and it wasn't aware of the situation in this place, so Russia used that time to advance forward. Later on they were stopped for a while in this direction, but after it we have a new breakthrough of the Russian army towards Pokrovsk. All this entire operation took Russia, I believe, 11 months, something like that. In general, Russians moved by 38 kilometers. Yes, you may say that Ukraine is more effective in Kursk Oblast, advancing the similar distance in just a single week. But here Russia did it in almost 1 year, but it's very hard to compare Kursk operation with the Pokrovsk operation because Russia was caught off guard. They were not ready, and here Ukraine has the large group of forces, maybe the largest group in all of the Ukrainian front lines. But still Russia managed to propel that far, especially for the last time, for the last months. Again, I want to show you what was 1 month ago. So it was 1 month ago, my friends, and it is today. I'm constantly reviewing the front lines, and I haven't seen that fast advancement of the Russian army for a single month. Well, maybe it was like that in 2022, then Russia was taking the settlement after settlement, and here they do the same. Yeah, the pace is still slower compared to the very beginning of the full-scale war, but it is the fastest since the time. So what's the tactics Russia is using right now in this direction and in many other directions? We may call it mid-waves, but Russia now minimizes the number of the soldiers in their assault groups. So now they attack with 5, 6 soldiers, but they send those constantly wave by wave and usually without any backup from the tanks or heavy armored vehicles. Like for example BMPs, so the idea for Russia is to create the constant pressure on Ukrainian defenders. So one group goes with 6 army men, collapses, then the next one, and they go like that entire day, then the next day, so our guys are really pressed by those attacks. It seems like Russia learned part of the lessons and now they try again minimize the groups. That's what the Ukrainian army actually did during the counteroffensive last year. At first, the Ukraine attacked with large forces, losing many of the vehicles and army personnel, and after it, Zelensky decided to spread the Ukrainian forces into the small groups, and that's how Ukraine was able to move forward, taking this ground. The same is happening in Pokrov's direction almost, but Russia doesn't care about their army men. That's why they can send those constantly. The thing is that the defense lines, which should have been prepared to protect Pokrovsk, do not exist. Well, there are some of the defense lines, but the Ukrainian soldiers usually dig those on their own. Or, for example, if the defense lines were built by some organization before, Ukrainian soldiers still had to waste their resources to make those defense lines capable to withstand the Russian strikes. So our soldiers waste the crucial time. So for example, our guys were fighting in this area. Now Russia advances here. Ukrainian soldiers will have to go back to this defense line, for example. But the trenches and the bunkers were made without roofs, without drone protection. So our guys have to waste the time not for the fighting, but to adjust their new positions. But Russia is very close. They fire mortars, they fire artillery. That's why our guys have to go back and back. The situation with the defense lines is kind of terrible. So the problems in the Ukrainian army system, they do exist. They exist for many years, I would say more than 10 years, but they intensified in Pokrov's direction and we may basically see them. Why do I like Telegram? Because there are our soldiers who are brave enough to speak about the situation, tell the truth, the things as they are. Yeah, that truth is not convenient, but we have to tell about it. It's not the Russian propaganda or something, but if we'll hide the problem, it will continue to exist. So what Sterenko or me saying here is the sad reality just for you to understand, and Ukraine needs to cope with those issues, otherwise there is no way for the future victory. The system itself should be reformed. Yes, we're gonna speak about reforms in Ukrainian army too. And it's nothing new in what I'm telling in this video, for example. So one more issue for Ukrainian army, that it concentrated lots of the brigades, regiments and battalions to defend this area. But in many of the cases, there is no communication between those battalions. They fight on their own. I should show it like that. So there is poor or no communication in some of the cases between battalions and those groups of the soldiers, let's say. Well, I heard about this stuff before, but I didn't know that the problem is so critical. And the higher Ukrainian military command didn't do anything to establish the communication between those regiments, brigades and battalions. At least that is what our soldiers and volunteers say. So communication is not just poor from the Russian side, but also Ukrainian army has that issue. Since Sergei Sternenko is a drone volunteer, he knows the situation from his perspective relative to those soldiers who fight mostly with the drones. And he told that there is also poor communication between our drone units and our electronic warfare units. So for example, you have two of the drone spots somewhere. Our guys who fly FPV drones to target the Russian advancing forces. But there are somewhere electronic warfare units, so they have the special systems to provide interference against the Russian drones. So they cover, for example, this area to jam the Russian drones which might potentially attack Ukrainian armed forces behind the front lines. But our guys need to reach also the Russian positions and they need to cover the Ukrainian drone jammers. Let's draw like this. So for example, this is electronic warfare, it covers this area and our drone units call those jammers to cancel their operation in certain corridor for the drones to reach Russian positions. But in many of the cases there is a poor communication with the drone jammer units and the drone units. That's why Ukraine is losing many drones because of its own jammers. Sternenko said about the astonishing number, just 15% of the Ukrainian drones are reaching the Russian targets, 15. And if there are no drone jammers, 60% of the Ukrainian drones reach the target. So Ukrainian drone jammers jam more Ukrainian drones than the Russian side. And even if Ukrainian drone units have this corridor, there could be some of the independent groups of the soldiers who have their own portable drone jammers. So they also jam Russian and Ukrainian drones independently. It means that the entire drone operation system, the communication between those units it doesn't work properly. Also, Stirnenko said that there were the cases, many of the cases, that the drone operators were forced to fight as the infantry soldiers, or the Ukrainian command sent those to fight as the infantry soldiers. Drone operators do not have those skills to fight as an infantry. What they do is they operate the drones and do it effectively. So it's a very bad situation that the personnel with the skills, some turned rare skills, are sent in the trenches to fight with Kalashnikov. Then at the same time they could have targeted, for example, Russian tanks, BMPs, or the large groups of the Russian soldiers. The Azov regiment recently filmed a video with their drone operator who demolished the Russian equipment worth $15 million. So is this guy good for the trenches? No, he is a fantastic drone operator. Alright, one more big problem, probably it's the biggest in Ukrainian army, the disinformation of the high military command. This problem also exists in the Russian army, but in Ukraine we have it too, unfortunately. Well, as I told you, there are many regiments, battalions, brigades which defend the territory, but all of them comply to higher general command. And because, let's say, the ex-Soviet philosophy which still exists in Ukrainian army, the local commanders of the forces are afraid to tell the truth to the higher command about the situation on the ground, especially if they lose positions. Basically, they're afraid to be punished. So they tell to the higher military command that, for example, Selidova is fully under Ukrainian control. It's just an example. But in fact, you see that Russians went inside, there is the gray area, the battle continues. The higher military command, those generals, they don't see the picture on the ground. It's the duty of the local commanders. But the higher military command takes the decisions. For example, they think, okay, those soldiers or that brigade fights there for a very long time, it's time to change it. It's quite a good situation for now because, as we reported, the Russians are just at the outskirts. They were stopped not far away from the place, so let's send more effective brigade to Selidova, for example. Again, it's just an example, to reinforce this part. So what they do, they order to remove the Ukrainian armed forces for Selidova and change them to the other brigade, for example, which is more capable to prepare this area for the future heavy fighting. And during this rotation, Russia takes the entire settlement. The brigade which comes to defend the place is just caught off guard. They thought that they will go to our control positions, but they face the Russian army right from their wheels. And that causes lots of the losses. But you know, the commander of this unit who reported the wrong information, he is clear. I mean, he's not even punished. The situation deteriorated very fast. Russia just sent some of the reinforcements. It's not my fault. And definitely there is no responsibility for those wrong actions. And it encourages the commanders to report the wrong situation on the ground to the high military command. So then we heard from Zelensky or Syrskyi that situation is controllable. No, the actual situation, for example, in Pokrovsk is already uncontrollable. I'm not saying that it is happening elsewhere on the front lines, but there are some of the commanders who give the wrong information to the high military command, and the high military command, because of that wrong information, give the orders which just destroy the Ukrainian defense. It is, I think, the most important issue for the Ukrainian army. And again, guys, those are not my words. Stirnenko told about it, and our military guys, they tell about this stuff on Telegram. And not just on Telegram, so I'm raising the awareness also. So I'm here to explain the situation, the truth actually of why Ukraine is losing the ground that fast. Simply because the Ukrainian army system is far to be ideal. And here we come closer to the question whether Ukraine should have started the Kursk operation, which is successful, by the way, by the time that Ukraine loses the ground on the east. Well, I think that this question should exist. It has the background, obviously. It is quite logical, but at the same time, the forces which Ukraine used in Kursk, those are mostly the Assad forces, paratroopers. Their task is not defense but offense mainly, and if Ukraine had used them in this direction in Pokrovsk, judging on all of those issues, it wouldn't have changed the picture that much. It's my opinion. Also, the problems in Pokrovsk direction started well before the Kursk operation of Ukrainian army, so I don't think that those are connected. I know that Financial Times came out with the article saying this situation is because of the Kursk operation. Ukraine sent reinforcements which should have been used to protect Pokrovsk, but not. As I told you, those are totally different forces. As you know, the most of the mainstream media wants just a big title and some of the sensation-telling lies. Sternenko also told the issue about the disbursement of the Ukrainian armed forces. For example, some sort of the small unit or brigade may control the vast territory. Just because they were told to control it, that's why they disperse their forces to every tree line, every trench in the area, and sometimes those forces are simply not enough to hold the Russian assaults. But at the same time, brigade with more soldiers controls the area which is very narrow, very small, and they have enough forces to repel the Russian strikes. But the nearby territory is not secure because they have less people. That's why Russia attacks from the flanks and they try to encircle this brigade, which is more powerful. That's why Ukraine has to retreat the forces. And Russia strikes with those clouds as usual. It's their tactics, so they're seeking for these vulnerable or weak spots in Ukrainian defense, causing the more capable forces to retreat. Guys, what I'm drawing here is just an example. I'm using this map to show you the situation. It is not happening there at this time, at this moment. No one knows actually what forces Ukraine deployed here in this direction or there. This information is classified and I wish Ukrainian command knows about it. In the circumstances I'm telling you. One more idea which Sternenko said, and I mostly agree with him, that the highest military and political command of Ukraine, for example, Syrskyi, Zelensky, they do not see this problem. It seems like they think that telling about those issues is a bad thing, that you are working for Russia. It's some sort of the Russian propaganda. But the problem is that Zelensky and Syrskyi, they don't see the actual situation on the ground, which could be just delivered by the soldiers on the ground. But all of those signals from the Ukrainian soldiers directly to their commanders, and after, they just evaporate on the way while reaching Zelensky and Syrskyi. The structure of Ukrainian army is really complicated with lots of the commanders, and many, as I told you, do not want to share the information about the issues in Ukrainian army because they think, those commanders think, that they will be punished by the higher commanders and so on. It's the heritage of the Soviet army, and Ukraine was a Soviet republic before. So it's really hard to get from this old school philosophy. And because of that, our soldiers and volunteers have to use the independent channels to communicate with publicity now. So if Zelensky, Syrskyi, they do not hear Ukrainian soldiers, those soldiers have to scream loud about the issues, especially during the critical moments as it's happening now in Pokrovsk. So they call Ukrainian command and political managers to act fast, otherwise Pokrovsk might be taken by Russians in the coming weeks. In its turn, it definitely creates the threat for entire Donetsk Oblast. Hopefully, the Ukrainian military command will hear those voices. Now I'm here also to raise the awareness probably on the West, because Ukraine is dependent on the Western weaponry, so our allies should see how Ukraine fights on the front lines and, I don't know, maybe to influence the Ukrainian military command to act in the right manner. Sternenko also said that in the eyes of the political managers of Ukraine, we are like spies of Russia, spies of Hungary, whatsoever, if we raise those questions, those issues, which absolutely should be resolved. Also, you may remember General Sodol, the commander of the Hortitsa Ukrainian army group, who according to many of the Ukrainian soldiers, and here we have many of the complaints towards him and his actions even from Azov brigade, from some of the Ukrainian MPs and so on. So he just sent many of the Ukrainian soldiers in the useless attacks. Because of him, many soldiers died. The Washington Post came out with the article that General Sodol did not lead the defense of Mariupol, did not spend any hour in the city, but was awarded the title of Hero of Ukraine for the defense of Mariupol. It is crazy. Sodol did not supply the Azov brigade with ammunition or build defenses in Mariupol. So for many Ukrainian soldiers, he is a murderer and criminal for his commands, which were absolutely wrong, for his useless operations, and he is not punished, he was rewarded. There is no investigation against Sodol, and people are screaming about it. And here comes also the problem with the Ukrainian mobilization, because Ukrainian men, they see this picture. They see that they could be thrown for some sort of the useless mission by like general pseudo generals, and those generals will not be responsible for that. If the system is not good, it's the light word that I use, it will create the problems with other systems, like for example mobilization in Ukrainian army. And fucking best news after the best news. The General Commander Syrskyi decided to put this guy in charge of the Joint Drone Ukrainian systems. His name is Roman Hladky. He is the ex-Marine commander or something like that. He has absolutely no connection with the drones. Moreover, he's been suspect in the spy case and the betrayal case. His wife has the Russian passport. His daughter represented Russia in sport exhibitions. Guys, I'm not making this stuff up. You may see here it's his daughter definitely represents Russians. Probably they lived in Russia even for some time. Sternenko and many of the Ukrainian officers already called this stuff as a sabotage inside the Ukrainian army, aimed to ruin the Ukrainian drone systems in general. So yes, we might be joyful that the Ukrainian army goes and takes some sort of the ground of the Russian Federation, then the Ukrainian army counterattacks. I can see it on my views that you guys really like it. I do like it a lot. But with this system, I think we'll see less and less Ukrainian counteroffensives and more offensives from the Russian side. The system is sick. It should be cured with military reforms. And Ukrainian society is now very angry. This news just came out this morning while I am filming this video, and our guys and some of the MPs of Ukraine are really angry on Syrskyi, especially because it was his order to put this guy in charge of the Ukrainian drone systems, the unit which is created for the first time, and this guy has absolutely no attitude towards the drones. Moreover, you already know his background. Officers of the Azov regiment are calling to reform Ukrainian army, the structure of Ukrainian army, because there are too many commanders. They call to switch to the divisional system because it's better in control. And actually the most of the local commanders, they do agree on that, but the higher general is against. It means not just a single general, but the general command of Ukrainian army. He said that's why we close some holes, because now Azov regiment is used definitely to close the holes in Ukrainian defense. Basically, with the current command, they belong to everyone and no one. If there was a divisional command, Azov would be focused on some certain area where it would be very successful. And I do support that stuff. Also, the spokesman of Azov, Bogdan Kartevich, added that he is not surprised about Pokrovsk, etc. Then you are engaged in this derazitikatestvo. It means this whole plugging. Everything that happens is logical. So he complains that Azov regiment is like emergency assistance for the Ukrainian military command. They don't want to change the system. They don't want to learn on their mistakes. What they do, they call Azov, please help. We need you over here. We need you over there. And by doing so, the general command calls even more losses, especially in Azov regiment. That's what Bogdan calls they don't want to take responsibility on themselves. And those generals are sure that they'll not get anything, so they will not be punished for their wrong actions. Let's see, he said, saying that probably Azov has the power to change something, or at this current stage, I don't think they have the power that much. Unfortunately, it's the reality, guys, and my duty is to tell you about this stuff, because under some sort of the propaganda, you may not see, or for example, why Ukraine is not that successful in defense of Pokrovsk. Hopefully, with this video, you will understand why. There are many issues in Ukrainian army that should be solved. But I think that finally, without our allies, especially from the United States of America, those issues will continue to stay in Ukrainian army. I think our allies should insist on Ukraine to start the massive army reform. Otherwise, Ukraine will continue to lose the ground in Donetsk, or in the future maybe in Dnipropetrovsk Oblast, because Russia is just, I think, 25 kilometers away from the border with Dnipropetrovsk Oblast. Alright guys, I think it's enough for today. I'm gonna keep you updated on situation on the front lines, and not only. For now, please don't forget to press your huge like to this video. By doing so, you help me a lot. And as usual, I wish you all a peaceful sky wherever you are, and have a great time.